Ecology. 7.1 What is ecology? Ecology is the study of the relationships between living organisms and their environment, the interaction of organisms with each other, and the pattern and cause of the abundance and distribution of organism in nature. Thus, ecology is the science that attempts to answer questions about how the nature works. The term ecology was coined by German biologist Ernst Haeckel Siebing, meaning two Greek words, oikos meaning house, or dwelling place, and ogos meaning the study of, to denote such relationship between the organisms and their environment. O-I-E. Lithosphere. Figure 7.1. Organisms interact with physical environment comprised of atmosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere. Level of organization. Ecological patterns and processes vary as a function of the scale at which they operate. The scale changes in terms of hierarchy, and one can move up and down many different kinds of hierarchies in the ecology. The basic level of ecological organization starts with the individual, a single plant, insect or bird. The next level of organization is the population. Populations are no more than a collection of individuals of the same species within an area or region. The next, more complex, level of organization is the community. The term ecology was coined by German biologist Ernst Haeckel Siebing, meaning two Greek words, oikos meaning house, or dwelling place, and ogos meaning the study of, to denote such relationship between the organisms and their environment. O-I-E. Lithosphere. Figure 7.1. Organisms interact with physical environment comprised of atmosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere. Level of organization. Ecological patterns and processes vary as a function of the scale at which they operate. The scale changes in terms of hierarchy, and one can move up and down many different kinds of hierarchies in the ecology. The basic level of ecological organization starts with the individual, a single plant, insect or bird. The next level of organization is the population. Populations are no more than a collection of individuals of the same species within an area or region. The next, more complex, level of organization is the community. Communities are made up of different populations of interacting plants, animals, and microorganisms within some defined geographic area. The next level of organization is the ecosystem. An ecosystem consists of different communities of organisms associated within a physically defined space. Terrestrial ecosystems can be grouped into units of similar nature, termed biomes, such as a deciduous forest, grassland, coniferous forest, etc., or into a geographic unit, termed landscapes, containing several different types of ecosystems. Based on level of organization, ecology is classified into autoecology and synecology. Autoecology is the study of a single species and the environmental conditions that control it. Synecology is the study of group of populations co-occurring in time and space, also called community ecology. That is, synecology describes the biotic community as a whole, especially the links between organisms. Environment. Organisms and their environment are dynamic and interdependent. The term environment etymologically means surroundings. Thus environment includes everything, biotic as well as abiotic, surround an organism. 74. Life Sciences Admin. S-T. N. E. R. B. R. R. S. U. Ecology. And all the abiotic components like temperature, wind, inorganic chemicals, radiations that affects, the biotic components described as environmental factors are ecological factors. Climate. Climate is the long-term pattern of weather in a locality, region, or even over the entire globe. Term climate and weather has different meaning. Weather is the short-term properties, such as temperature, pressure, moisture, of atmospheric conditions for a specific place and time. Weather differ in scale in both space and time. Two of the most important factors determining an area's climate are air temperature and precipitation. The climate of a region will determine what plants will grow there, and what animals will inhabit it. Climatic zone. Climatic zone represent any of the geographical zones, any of the regions on the surface of the Earth loosely divided according to latitude or longitude, loosely divided according to prevailing climate and latitude. On the basis of variation in mean temperature along I-attitude, the main climatic zones are 1. Tropical, 0 degrees minus 20 degrees latitude. 2. Subtropical, 20 degrees minus 40 degrees latitude. 3. Temperate, 40 degrees minus 60 degrees latitude. 4. Arctic and Antarctic, 60 degrees minus 80 degrees latitude. The mean temperature declines as we move from tropical to Arctic region. A similar climatic zonation occurs with increasing altitude in the mountains. A mountain located in a tropical region will successively have tropical, subtropical, temperate and alpine zones with increasing altitude. Within each temperature-based climatic zone, the annual precipitation, rainfall and/or snowfall varies considerably. Microclimate. The microclimate represents the climatic conditions that prevail at a local scale, or in areas of limited size, such as the immediate surroundings of plants and animals. Microclimate generally differs from the prevailing regional climatic conditions. For example, in a forest, dense foliage reduces the amount of light reaching the ground. This also results in a changed air temperature profile in a forest. Atmosphere. Atmosphere is the gaseous mass or envelope surrounding a celestial body, especially the one surrounding the Earth, and retained by the celestial body's gravitational field. The atmosphere is densest at the surface of the Earth because gravity pulls the molecules of gas toward the center of the Earth. The atmosphere divided into 4 general layers. Troposphere. More than 80% of the mass of the atmosphere and virtually all of the water vapor, clouds, and precipitation occur in the troposphere. At the poles the troposphere may extend up to about 5-6 kilometers, while at the equator it is about 18 km. In the troposphere, temperatures typically decrease at 5 to 7 degrees Celsius per kilometer. Stratosphere. This layer extends up to 50 kilometers and a thin layer of ozone is present at height of 15 to 30 kilometers. The troposphere and stratosphere combined account for about 99.9% of the mass of the atmosphere. Mesosphere. This layer starts at 50 kilometers above Earth's surface and goes up to 85 kilometers high. As we move up in the mesosphere, the temperature gets colder. The top of the mesosphere is the coldest part of Earth's atmosphere. The temperature there is around minus 90 degrees Celsius. E13. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. Thermosphere. It extends from about 90 kilometers to between 500 and 1,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Climatic zone represent any of the geographical zones, any of the regions on the surface of the Earth loosely divided according to latitude or longitude, loosely divided according to prevailing climate and latitude. On the basis of variation in mean temperature along I-attitude, the main climatic zones are 1. Tropical, 0 degrees minus 20 degrees latitude. 2. Subtropical, 20 degrees minus 40 degrees latitude. 3. Temperate, 40 degrees minus 60 degrees latitude. 4. Arctic and Antarctic, 60 degrees minus 80 degrees latitude. The mean temperature declines as we move from tropical to Arctic region. A similar climatic zonation occurs with increasing altitude in the mountains. A mountain located in a tropical region will successively have tropical, subtropical, temperate and alpine zones with increasing altitude. Within each temperature-based climatic zone, the annual precipitation, rainfall and/or snowfall varies considerably. Microclimate. The microclimate represents the climatic conditions that prevail at a local scale, or in areas of limited size, such as the immediate surroundings of plants and animals. Microclimate generally differs from the prevailing regional climatic conditions. For example, in a forest, dense foliage reduces the amount of light reaching the ground. This also results in a changed air temperature profile in a forest. Atmosphere. Atmosphere is the gaseous mass or envelope surrounding a celestial body, especially the one surrounding the Earth, and retained by the celestial body's gravitational field. The atmosphere is densest at the surface of the Earth because gravity pulls the molecules of gas toward the center of the Earth. The atmosphere divided into 4 general layers. Troposphere. More than 80% of the mass of the atmosphere and virtually all of the water vapor, clouds, and precipitation occur in the troposphere. At the poles the troposphere may extend up to about 5-6 kilometers, while at the equator it is about 18 km. In the troposphere, temperatures typically decrease at 5 to 7 degrees Celsius per kilometer. Stratosphere. This layer extends up to 50 kilometers and a thin layer of ozone is present at height of 15 to 30 kilometers. The troposphere and stratosphere combined account for about 99.9% of the mass of the atmosphere. Mesosphere. This layer starts at 50 kilometers above Earth's surface and goes up to 85 kilometers high. As we move up in the mesosphere, the temperature gets colder. The top of the mesosphere is the coldest part of Earth's atmosphere. The temperature there is around minus 90 degrees Celsius. E13. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. Thermosphere. It extends from about 90 kilometers to between 500 and 1,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Within the thermosphere temperatures rise continually to well beyond 1,000 degrees Celsius. Within the thermosphere is a relatively dense band of charged particles, called the ionosphere. Thermosphere. 1001. 80. E mesosphere. X 60 cents. VYHE-O. Equals P. Less than 40. Stratosphere. 20. Troposphere. 0 100 trillion 200 billion 300 million 400,000 500. Temperature K. Figure 7.2, Temperature Profile of the Atmosphere. Table 7.1, Composition of clean, dry air fraction by volume constituent. Nitrogen. Oxygen. Argon. Carbon dioxide neon. Helium. Methane. Krypton. Nitrous oxide hydrogen. Light. Concentration 0.78. 0.20. 0.0093. 355 ppm, year 1990, 18 ppm. 5.2 ppm. 1.8 ppm. 1.1 ppm. 0.3 ppm. 0.5 ppm. Light is a part of electromagnetic spectrum, approximately 400 to 700 nanometers. Light or visible spectrum having wavelengths of 0.4 to 0.7 micrometer is also called photosynthetically active radiation, part because in this range of wavelength plants carry out photosynthesis. The electromagnetic radiation above and below visible spectrum is known as IR, infrared, and UV, ultraviolet, respectively. Depending upon the wavelength, 3 types of ultraviolet radiation are distinguished: UVC 0.100 to 0.280 micrometer, UVVB 0.280 to 0.320 micrometer, and UVA 0.320 to 0.400 micrometer. Tilde. 376. Life Sciences Admin. PA-NA. RN. Ecology. 400 nanometers, 700 nanometers. M% visible. Quote /. IGHT, YH. T 0.11, 100, 1000, 10,000, 100,000 nanometers NMNMNMNMNMNM, wavelength greater than figure 7.3, the electromagnetic spectrum of solar radiation. Effect of light on plants. The quality, wavelength, the intensity, energy measured in calories, and duration, length of day, of light are important to organisms. The intensity of light varies with latitude and time of the day. Light affects the processes of photosynthesis, growth and reproduction in plants. The quality of light plays an important role in flower induction, seed germination and plant movements. The duration of light regulates the phenological process, such as flowering and fruiting, in plants. Plants adapted to grow in high and low light environment are referred as heliophytes and geophytes, respectively. Soil. Soil is the uppermost weathered layer of Earth's crust and is composed of minerals and partly decomposed organic matters. The study of soils is called podology. Soil is a biologically active matrix. It is a home for plant roots, seeds, animals, bacteria, fungi, algae, and viruses. Soil composition. Soils are composed of mineral matters, air, water, and organic matters. In an average soil, 45% of the volume is the mineral matters, about 5% organic matter and 50% soil, air and water. There are two general types of soils, mineral swamps and organic soils. Mineral soils form from decomposed rocks or sediment derived from rocks. Mineral particles are inorganic materials derived from rocks and minerals. They are extremely variable in size and composition. The elements that are found in soils in the highest quantities are O, C, Al, Fe, C, Ca, K, Na, and Mg. These are also major elements found in the Earth's crust and in sediments. The mineral particles present in soils vary enormously in size. The fine fragment consisting of sand, silt, and CIAY particles, and the coarse fragments gravel, cobbles, and stones. The relative proportions of sand, silt, and clay in a soil is referred as soil texture. It is often the first and most important property to be determined when describing a soil. Mineral particles comprise half the volume of mineral soils. The other half of the soil volume is composed of voids or holes. These voids fill with air or water. Soil organic matter includes iving biomass, detritus dead tissue, and humus non-living, non-tissa. Humus is an amorphous and colloidal mixture of complex organic substances. It is made of humic substances, comprise about 60 to 80% of the soil organic matters and characterized by dark-colored amorphous substance, and non-humic substances refers to the group of identifiable biomolecules that are mainly produced by It is made of humic substances, comprise about 60 to 80% of the soil organic matters and characterized by dark-colored amorphous substance, and non-humic substances refers to the group of identifiable biomolecules that are mainly produced by microbial action and less resistant to breakdown. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. Soil profile. The mineral and organic components of soil are differentiated into horizons or strata of variable depth. Each of these horizons differs in morphology, physical structure, and chemical and biological characteristics. These horizons are evident when a vertical cut is made through the soil, revealing the soil profile. The widely accepted structure of the soil profile is as follows. O. Organic litter of loose leaves and debris. A. Rich in humus and dark in color. A. Zone of maximum leaching of minerals, readily available minerals to plant roots present in this layer. B. Little organic material and the chemical composition is largely that of the underlying rock, also referred to as the zone of accumulation since minerals from above and below tend to concentrate here. 5. Parent rock, which is weakly weathered. Unweathered bedrock. The soil profile and the relative thickness of the horizons are generally characteristic for different climatic regions and different topographical situations. For example, in grassland soil humification is rapid, but mineralization is slow. In forest soils litter and root decay slowly, hence humus layer is narrow, but mineralization is rapid, so B horizon is broad. Soil water. Within the soil system, the storage of water is influenced by several different forces. According to the nature of interaction between soil particles and water molecules, soil water may be classified into following types. Hygroscopic water. Water present as a thin film around the soil particles and remains firmly attached is called as the hygroscopic water. It is not utilized by plants, hence it is unavailable to plants. Capillary water. 7 water present in thin and narrow capillaries formed by soil particles and widely utilized by plants. The water present in soil which can be utilized by plants called Croissard, available water. Gravitational water. Water percolates deep into the soil due to the gravitational force of the earth. That constitute table or groundwater. It is not available to plants. Chemically bound water. Water present in the form of hydrated oxides of iron, aluminum, silicon, etc. Is Within the soil system, the storage of water is influenced by several different forces. According to the nature of interaction between soil particles and water molecules, soil water may be classified into following types. Hygroscopic water. Water present as a thin film around the soil particles and remains firmly attached is called as the hygroscopic water. It is not utilized by plants, hence it is unavailable to plants. Capillary water. 7 water present in thin and narrow capillaries formed by soil particles and widely utilized by plants. The water present in soil which can be utilized by plants called Croissard, available water. Gravitational water. Water percolates deep into the soil due to the gravitational force of the earth. That constitute table or groundwater. It is not available to plants. Chemically bound water. Water present in the form of hydrated oxides of iron, aluminum, silicon, etc. Is described as chemically bound water and is not available to plants. Field capacity. It is the measurement of maximal amount of water that soil can hold due to adhesion, capillary attraction, between soil and water, usually given as a percentage of total soil weight when saturated. The water potential of a soil at field capacity is around -0.01 megapascals. The lower limit of water availability in soil is known as wilting point, having a water potential of -1.5 megapascals. With increase in the negative values of water potential, the water availability to plants is reduced. Temperature. Temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of a substance. The factors which influence variation in temperature include latitude, altitude, topography, vegetation, slope and others. The vertical temperature. Life Sciences. X. Admin. Ecology. Gradient over Earth's surface is called APS rate, the value being 6.5 degrees Celsius per 1,000 meters elevation. Temperature has a significant effect on the climatic conditions, growth response and activities of organisms. On the basis of temperature conditions, world's vegetation divided into various classes as megatherms, where high temperatures prevail throughout the year, and dominant vegetation is tropical rainforest mesotherms, with high temperature alternating with low temperature, and dominant vegetation is tropical deciduous forest microtherms, where low temperatures prevail and vegetation is of mixed coniferous forest type, and hecastotherms with very low temperature and alpine vegetation being dominant. Thermal stratification in aquatic habitats. Freshwater lentic ecosystems of temperate regions. Thermal stratification in aquatic habitats describe the differences in temperature that exists at different depth. Freshwater lentic ecosystems such as Lake % of temperate regions generally become thermally stratified due to differential heating and cooling. A well-stratified lake has a layer of freely circulating warm surface water with small temperature gradient known as the epilimnion. A second layer called metalimnion, which is characterized by steep decline in temperature and includes thermocline, a short zone of rapidly falling temperature. The third layer is the hypolimnion, is a deep, cold layer of dense water where no temperature gradient is evident. Thermocline checks the mixing of water between epilimnion and hypolimnion. In freshwater lotic ecosystems, thermal stratification is not observed. Whereas tropical shallow water bodies exhibit poikilothermy, middle layer cooler, or dictothermy, middle layer warmer. Epilimnion. Free circulating water, small temperature gradient. Metalimnion. Steep, rapid decline, in temperature. Hypolimnion and 3. JRHE, deep cold layer, temperature, drop gentle. Figure 7.4, thermal stratification of lake. Thermoregulation and homeostasis. Homeostasis is the property of a living organism, regulate its internal environment to maintain a stable, constant condition under varying external environment. Temperature is important in controlling the rate of processes inside an organism and also its activities, i.e., in maintaining homeostasis. All animals are broadly classified into two groups. 1. Homothermic or endothermic animals. Warm-blooded animals like birds and mammals are able to maintain their body temperature at a constant level irrespective of the environmental temperature. 2. Poikilothermic or ectothermic animals. Cold-blooded animals like reptiles, fishes, amphibians are not able to maintain their body temperature at a constant level. In these organisms, the body temperature fluctuates with changes in the Q environmental temperature. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. The generalization that warm-blooded endothermic animals tend to have more pigmentation in warm, humid areas than in cool, dry areas is described as Blodger's rule. Similarly, the generalization that warm-blooded mammals tend to have shorter extremities, e.g., ears and tail, in colder climates than they have in warmer climates is known as Allen's rule. The generalization that larger body size in animals living in cold The generalization that warm-blooded endothermic animals tend to have more pigmentation in warm, humid areas than in cool, dry areas is described as Blodger's rule. Similarly, the generalization that warm-blooded Ecology. The generalization that warm-blooded endothermic animals tend to have more pigmentation in warm, humid areas than in cool, dry areas is described as Blodger's rule. Similarly, the generalization that warm-blooded mammals tend to have shorter extremities, e.g., ears and tail, in colder climates than they have in warmer climates is known as Allen's rule. The generalization that larger body size in animals living in colder climates than those of the The generalization that larger body size in animals living in colder climates than those of the same group living in warmer climates is known as Bergmann's rule. Tolerance range, I. In the real world, environmental conditions exist as gradients. The changes in the performance of an organism along such a trend are called an environmental gradient. There are upper and lower threshold values on the gradient beyond which a species cannot survive. These points are the upper limit of tolerance and the lower limit of tolerance. The whole range over which a species is able to survive is the range of tolerance. Tolerance ranges differ for one species to another. The prefix steno and uri have been used for comparing the relative narrow or wide degree of tolerance respectively of an organism to a given environmental factor. For example, stenothermal organisms can tolerate only a narrow range of temperature, whereas urothermal have wide range of temperature tolerance. Stenohydric and urihydric refers to narrow and wide tolerance, respectively, of water. Similarly, setnohaline and urahaline refers to narrow and wide tolerance, respectively, of salinity. Tolerance and acclimation have different meaning. The gradual physiological adjustments to slowly changing environmental conditions is known as acclimation. Acclimation allows organisms to survive permanently in changing environments. Optimum tolerance range. X. P O. O O W Q. 3 W N. I 302. NO3. Or fitness N. Growth maximum ORGA NISM. PERFO NCE. ORGA NISMS. ABSNT. Plus, environmental gradient. Figure 7.5, the response of an organism to a range or gradient of an environment. Factor, temperature, light, nutrient. Ecological amplitude. Different species differ from each other in terms of their demands, requirements, from their environments and consequently also in respect of the extent to which they can tolerate the fluctuations in their environmental conditions. This range of demands and consequent range of tolerance of a species is known as its ecological amplitude. This range of demands and consequent range of tolerance of a species is known as its ecological amplitude. In other words, it is the range of the environmental factors that a particular species can tolerate. Law of minimum. Liebig's law of the minimum, also termed as Liebig's law or law of the minimum, states that growth of an organism is controlled not by the total of resources available, but by the missing or deficient resource. Life Sciences Admin. R. R. T. S. P. M. N. P. Ecology. This concept was originally applied to plant or crop growth, where it has been found that if one crop nutrient is missing or deficient, plant growth will be poor, even if the other elements are abundant, and increasing the amount of plentiful nutrients did not increase plant growth. Only by increasing the amount of the limiting nutrient, the one most least in relation to need, was the growth of a plant or crop improved. Ecological adaptations. Every organism requires specific environmental conditions for its normal growth and development, i.e. organisms are adapted to some environmental conditions which are necessary for them to remain alive. The characters of organisms that are affected by ecological factors are called adapted characters, and appearance of these characters is called ecological adaptation. For example, particular plant group requires specific condition for normal growth. On the basis of water requirement and type of soil, there are four major types of plant group. These are hydrophytes, mesophytes, halophytes and xerophytes. Hydrophytes. These are the plants growing in extremely wet or watery condition. Hydrophytes are further subdivided into 5 main types. A free-floating hydrophytes. These hydrophytes float freely on the surface of water. They are not rooted in soil and mud. Their whole plant body float on water and remain in contact with air, e.g., Eichhornia, Salvinia, Lemna, Wolffia, Azolla, etc. B-rooted hydrophytes with floating leaves. These hydrophytes have roots fixed in mud, but their leaves keep on floating on the water surface. They have long petiole, and except leaves all plant parts are under the water, e.g., Trappa, Nymphaea, Nelumba EFC. C-suphimered floating hydrophytes. These plant remains underwater completely and are not rooted in mud but remains floating. Their stem is long and leaves are short. QG, Ceratophyllum, Utricularia, etc. Desubmerged rooted hydrophytes. The hydrophytes which are rooted in mud at bottom and remain under the water are submerged rooted hydrophytes, e.g., Hydrilla, Vallisneria, Potamogeton, etc. E-rooted emergent or amphibious plants. In these the root is fixed in soil and stem remain partly or completely exposed to air. Hence half of plant remain outside the water and half remain underwater. Due to this they are called as amphibious plants. Q, Typha, Sagittaria, etc. Xerophytes. The plants which grow in dry or xeric conditions or where availability of water is negligible are known as xerophytes. The xerophytes are generally described as plants of dry habitat. Xerophytic habitat can be of different types such as A. Physical dryness. In these habitat, soil has very little ability to hold water in it. So there is lack of water in soil. This is also due to low rainfall, e.g. desert, rocky or stony places, etc. B. Physiological dryness. In such habitat, water is sufficiently present but plants are unable to absorb it, e.g. salty soil, acidic soil, snow, cold desert, etc. Xerophytes are classified into 3 categories on the basis of their life cycle. A. Ephemeral annuals. These plants complete their life cycle in very short period before approach of actual dry conditions. These are not true xerophytes. They are also called as drought escapers or drought evaders, e.g. Argemone mexicana, Solanum xanthocarpum, etc. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. B. Drought-enduring plants or succulents. These xerophytes store water in their roots or stem or leaves for dry period. Thus they suffer dryness externally but escape internally due to presence of fleshy water-strong tissues. QG. Opuntia, aloe. C. Drought-resistant or non-succulent plant. These are the true xerophytes. They face both external and internal dryness. They have many adaptation to resist dry condition, e.g., Calotropis procera, Casuarina equisetifolia, Ziziphus jujube. Mesophytes. Mesophytes are terrestrial plants which are adapted to neither a particularly dry nor particularly wet environment. Halophytes. Halophytes are the plants which grow in saline condition or in high salt concentration. These plants thus face physiological dryness. Halophytes can tolerate high salinity concentrations in both water and soil. Typical adaptations are succulents, water-conserving mechanisms, and specialized surface morphology, e.g., trichomes and waxes. Resistance to salinity is costly, explaining the slow growth of halophytes. Energy expenditure for ion pumping is required for sodium export from glands, partitioning, movement of sodium away from growing tissues, or storage in vacuoles, specialized cells, or senescing leaves. Concept of species. Biologists have not been able to agree on exactly what a species is, or how species should be defined. Species traditionally have been described and identified on the basis of morphological criteria. According to morphological criteria, species are groups of individuals that are morphologically similar and clearly distinguishable from individuals of other groups. The biological species concept defines a species as members of populations that actually or potentially interbreed in nature, not according to similarity of appearance. Although appearance is helpful in identifying species, it does not define species. This concept emphasizes that a species is an evolutionary unit. Members share genes with other members of their species, and not with members of other species. The ecological species concept defines a species as a set of organisms exploiting a single niche adaptive zone. According to the biological species concept, species form discrete units because of gene flow. But, the ecological species concept emphasizes selection. Selection favors certain forms and removes forms that are intermediate between species. Ecotype and ecads. An ecotype is a population of individui of a species which are genetically different. The different ecotypes of a particular species may differ in their edaphic, biotic or microclimatic requirements. In ecotypes, adaptations become irreversible or genetically fixed. Thus ecotypes are genetically adapted local population. Ecospecies is a unit of classification which contains one of more ecotypes. Ecotypes are genetically adapted local population. Ecospecies is a unit of classification which contains one of more ecotypes. Ecospecies although interfertile but do not cross or at least do not produce viable offspring, if crossed with ecotypes of other species. Ecads are also known as ecophenes. An ecad of a plant species is a population of individuals which although belong to the same genetic stock, but differ markedly in vegetative characters such as size, shape, and number of leaves, etc. These variations are environmentally induced, and thus are temporary or reversible, i.e., one type of ecad may change into another with a change in its habitat. So, if different ecads are transplanted in same habitat, all would become similar in appearance. Thus, ecads show phenotypic plasticity, i.e., environmentally induced phenotypic variation. Life Sciences Admin. 1. S. T. Ecology. K-selected and R-selected species. Each species has a characteristic mode of reproduction. At one extreme are species that reproduces early and put most of their energy into reproduction. They have many, usually small, offspring each time they reproduce, reach reproductive age rapidly, have short generation time, give their offspring little or no parental care of protection to help them survive and are short-lived, usually with a lifespan of less than a year. Species with this reproductive pattern overcome the massive loss of their offspring by producing so many unprotected young that a few will survive to reproduce many offspring to begin the cycle again. Species with such a capacity for a high intrinsic rate of increase are called R-selected species. Algae, bacteria, rodents, annual plants such as dandelions, and most insects are examples. Such species tend to be opportunists. They reproduce and disperse rapidly when conditions are favorable or when a disturbance opens up a new habitat or niche for invasion, as in the early stages of ecological succession. At the other extreme are K-selected species. The Z species put fairly little energy into reproduction, tend to reproduce late in life, have few offspring with long generation times and put most of their energy into nurturing and protecting their young until they reach reproductive age. Features of R-selected and K-selected species. K-selected species. Environment. 1. Constant or predictably variable. Population characteristic. 1. Survivorship curve convex. 2. Low fecundity. 3. Density fairly constant at or near carrying capacity individual characteristic. 1. Large body size. 2. Poor dispersal powers. 3. Parthenogenetic or vegetative reproduction. 4. BL. KG. A. T. B. High level of social organization are selected species. Environment. 1. Variable and unpredictable. Population characteristic. 1. Survivorship curve concave. 2. High fecundity. 3. Density variable usually well below carrying capacity. DL. S. T. P. Re. I. E. N. OA. L. A. N. T. Individual characteristic. 1. Small body size. 2. Good dispersal process. 3. Outcrossing. 4. Low level of social organization. Life sciences admin. Ecology. Concept of habitat and ecological niche. The term niche was for the first time used by Grinnell, 1971. Niche is the ultimate distributional unit, within which each species is held by its structural and instinctive limitations. The term ecological niche is frequently misunderstood and misused. It is often used loosely to describe the sort of place in which an organism lives. Strictly, however, the place or set of environmental condition in which a particular organism lives is its habitat. Niche is not a place but an idea, a summary of the organism's tolerances and requirements. For example, the habitat of a fish could be a whole lake. Each habitat, however, provides many different niches. The ecological niche of a species is defined by, first, the functional role of the species in its community, i.e., its trophic position, and secondly, the position of the species along environmental gradients such as temperature, moisture, soil pH, soil fertility, and other factors. A niche is thus defined by n variables, and can be defined as the limits for all important environmental features, within which individuals of a species can survive, grow, and reproduce. The limits of a species' existence are defined by a large number of variables was first described by American ecologist Hutchinson as a concept of the multidimensional or hypervolume niche. Fundamental niche and realized niche. The fundamental niche is the maximum theoretically inhabited hypervolume where a species, free from any sort of interference from another species, can occupy the full range of variables within the community to which it is adapted, to the outer limits of its tolerances. The realized niche is a smaller hypervolume which is occupied by the species under interference from the competition of other species. Coexisting competitors often exhibit a differentiation of their realized niche. Ecological equivalence. Organisms that occupy the same or similar ecological niches in different geographical regions, called ecological equivalents. Species that occupy same equivalent niches and occur in widely separated regions are generally taxonomically much different. A grassland-type ecosystem develops wherever there is a grassland climate, but the species of grasses, the producer, and grazers, herbivores, may be quite different, especially where regions are widely separated. 7.2 The ecosystems concept. An ECB system, A.G. Tansley, 1935, proposed the term ecosystem, is a The fundamental niche is the maximum theoretically inhabited hypervolume where a species, free from any sort of interference from another species, can occupy the full range of variables within the community to which it is adapted, to the outer limits of its tolerances. The realized niche is a smaller hypervolume which is occupied by the species under interference from the competition of other species. Coexisting competitors often exhibit a differentiation of their realized niche. Ecological equivalence. Organisms that occupy the same or similar ecological niches in different geographical regions, called ecological equivalents. Species that occupy same equivalent niches and occur in widely separated regions are generally taxonomically much different. A grassland-type ecosystem develops wherever there is a grassland climate, but the species of grasses, the producer, and grazers, herbivores, may be quite different, especially where regions are widely separated. 7.2 The ecosystems concept. An ECB system, A.G. Tansley, 1935, proposed the term ecosystem, is a functional unit comprising all the organisms in a particular place interacting with one another and with their physical environment, and interconnected by an ongoing flow of energy and a cycling of materials. An ecosystem can be visualized as a functional unit of nature. All ecosystems are open systems in the sense that energy and matter are transferred in and out. An ecosystem could be of any size depending on the communities to be studied, and its boundaries can be either real, natural, or arbitrary. The ecosystem is the first unit in the hierarchical organization of the living system from molecule to biosphere, which is complete, i.e., it has all components, biological and physical, necessary for survival. Accordingly, it is the basic unit around which theories and experiments of ecology are organized. Organism W, population W $, community M $, ecosystem M, landscape MP, biome, biosphere. Life sciences admin. E. S. N. E. Ecology. Ecosystem components. Ecosystems consist of various non-living, abiotic, and living, biotic components. The abiotic components of an ecosystem include various physical and chemical factors. The physical factors having the greatest effect on the ecosystem are sunlight, temperature, precipitation, wind, latitude and altitude, soil for terrestrial ecosystems, fire for terrestrial ecosystems, and water. However, the chemical factors are level of water and air in soil, level of plant nutrients dissolved in soil, level of moisture for terrestrial ecosystem, level of natural or artificial toxic substances dissolved in soil moisture and in water, salinity of water, as well as level of dissolved oxygen in aquatic ecosystems. Organisms that make up the biotic component of an ecosystem are usually classified as autotrophs and heterotrophs, based on how they get their food or organic nutrients they need to survive. Autotrophs, producers, are organisms that can manufacture the organic compounds they need as nutrients from simple inorganic compounds obtained from the environment. In most terrestrial ecosystems, green plants are the producers. In aquatic ecosystems, most of the producers are phytoplankton, consisting of various species of floating and drifting bacteria and protist. Most producers make their organic nutrients they need through photosynthesis. Some producers, mostly specialized bacteria, can extract inorganic compounds from their environment and convert them into organic nutrient compounds without using sunlight. These producers are called chemotrophs. Heterotrophs, consumers, or phagotrophs, are organisms which cannot synthesize the organic nutrients they need and get their organic nutrients by feeding on the tissues of producers or other consumers. Here are several classes of consumers, depending on their food source. 1. Primary consumers, herbivores, feed directly on plants or other producers. 2. Secondary consumers, carnivores, feed only on primary consumers. 3. Tertiary consumers feed only on animal-eating animals. 4. Omnivores can eat both plants and animals. 5. Saprotrophs. A saprotroph or saprobe is an organism that obtains its nutrients from non-living organic matter, usually dead and decaying plant or animal matter, by absorbing soluble organic compounds. Saprotroph includes both decomposers and detritivores. Decomposers are organisms that consume dead plants and animals, and, in doing so, carry out the natural process of decomposition. The primary decomposers are bacteria and fungi. Detritivores, also known as detrivores or detritus feeders, are animals that consume detritus, the dead bodies and waste product of living and once living organisms, are simply decomposing organic material and in doing so contribute to decomposition and the recycling of nutrients. Earthworms are a well-known example of detritus feeders, eating rotting plant leaves and other debris. Some detritus feeders, such as dung beetles, eat feces. Kinds of ecosystem. Ecosystems are of different types. These can be artificially categorized as follows: a natural ecosystem. 1. Terrestrial, such as forest, grassland, desert. 2. Aquatic, which may be further distinguished as freshwater, which may be lotic, running water such as river, or lentic, standing water such as yaki, pond. Marine, such as sea, ocean, estuaries. Life sciences admin. Ecology. B. Artificial, domesticated ecosystem. These are maintained artificially by man by addition of energy. For example, croplands like maize, wheat, rice field, etc., where man tries to control the biotic community as well as the physico-chemical environment. Ecosystem function. All biological entities require matter for their construction and energy for their activities. This is true not only for individual organisms, but also for the populations and communities that they form in nature. Ecosystems normally include primary producers, decomposers, and detritivores, a pool of dead organic matter, herbivores, carnivores and parasites, ple the physiochemical environment that provides the living conditions and acts both as a source and a sink for energy and matter. The key functional aspects of the ecosystem are 1. Productivity and energy flow. 2. Nutrient cycling. 3. Decomposition. 4. Water dynamics. Productivity. The rate of biomass production per unit area per unit time is called productivity. The primary productivity of a community is the rate at which biomass is a measure of the mass of the living organic material in a specific area or ecosystem produced per unit area by plants, the primary producers. The term primary indicates that we are concerned with the first trophic level in the system. It can be expressed either in units of energy, e.g., Jm equals day, or dry organic matter, e.g., kilogram Ha, year, or carbon, e.g., GCM2 year. The total fixa on of energy by photosynthesis is referred to as gross primary productivity, GPP. The proportion which remains after respiration losses in the plant is termed net primary productivity, NPP. Thus the difference between GPP and respiration is known as net primary productivity. NPP represents the actual rate of production of new biomass that is available for consumption by heterotrophic organisms, bacteria, fungi and animals. The rate of production of new biomass by heterotrophs is called secondary production. The rate of storage of organic matter not used by heterotrophs during the period under consideration is termed as net community productivity. Patterns in primary productivity. The net primary production of the planet is estimated to be about 105 petagrams of carbon per year, 1 Pascal equals 10 *g. Of this, 56.4 petagrams C year is produced in terrestrial ecosystems and 48.3 petagrams C year in aquatic ecosystems. Thus, although oceans cover about 2/3 of the world's surface, they account for less than half of its production. On the land, tropical rainforests and savannas account between them for about 60% of terrestrial NPP, reflecting the large areas covered by these biomes and their high levels of productivity. High level of net primary productivity, greater than 20 THA year, has been recorded for mature tropical rainforests. Deserts generally fall in the lowest productivity category, greater than 1 THA year. Smiley face. Sneeze. Life sciences admin. Ecology. Table 7.2, primary productivity of selected major biome types. Biome net primary productivity, gram per meter, per year, biomass, kilogram per meter. Tropical rainforest 2245, swamp and marsh 2015, tropical deciduous forest 1635, temperate deciduous forest 1230, temperate evergreen forest 1335, tropical savanna 904, taiga, boreal forest 820, woodland and scrubland 700, 6 cultivated land 651, temperate grassland 601.6, lake and stream 250.02, tundra and alpine 140.6, desert 90.7, extreme desert, rock, sand and ice 30.02, total terrestrial 773, 12.3, total world 333.6. Source: Whitaker and Likens, 1975. The Biosphere and Man, in Primary Productivity of the Bio. In Primary Productivity of the Biosphere. Springer Verlag, New York, pp. 305-328. Autochthonous and allochthonous. All biotic communities depend on a supply of organic matters, i.e., energy, for their activities. In most terrestrial ecosystems, organic matter produced by photosynthesis within an ecosystem's boundaries, this is known as autochthonous production. In most terrestrial ecosystems, organic matter produced by photosynthesis within an ecosystem's boundaries, this is known as autochthonous production. In most terrestrial ecosystems, organic matter produced by photosynthesis within an ecosystem's boundaries, this is known as autochthonous production. However, an ecosystem autochthonous and allochthonous. All biotic communities depend on a supply of organic matters, i.e., energy, for their activities. In most terrestrial ecosystems, organic matter produced by photosynthesis within an ecosystem's boundaries, this is known as autochthonous production. However, an ecosystem can receive organic matter from sources other than its own photosynthesis via the import of dead organic matters that has been produced elsewhere. Organic matter imported from elsewhere is called allochthonous. Energy flow. Ecosystems and the laws of thermodynamics. Energy flow is the key function in the ecosystem. The storage and expenditure of the energy in the ecosystem is based on two basic laws of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics states that when energy is converted from one form into another, energy is neither gained nor lost. The first law is also called the law of conservation of energy. The second law of thermodynamics states that every transformation results in a reduction of the free energy of the system. Energy transformation cannot be 100% efficient. Second law. The operation of an ecosystem is consistent with the laws of thermodynamics that deal with the relationships between energy and matter in a system. First, we can account for the total energy input to an ecosystem in budgetary fashion. This is consistent with the first law of thermodynamics. Energy may change form, e.g., from radiant to chemical, but not amount. But as energy moves through an ecosystem, it does change form, ultimately to heat, which is not directly usable by the system. Thus the system tends to run down, dissipating its energy and losing its organized structure, e. This is the nature of 387. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. The second law of thermodynamic, a tendency toward maximum disorganization of structure and maximum dissipation of usable energy. General principles of energy flow. The behavior of energy in ecosystems is referred to as energy flow because energy transformations are directional, in contrast to the cyclical behavior of nutrients. The conversion of solar radiation to chemical energy by photosynthesis is the starting point of energy flow within ecosystems. Top carnivores. Fr. Greater than. K equals carnivores C. Phi. 8. K herbivores greater than Section 3. GE. Re 17.6. Phi OGY pathways through an ecosystem. Usable energy flows from the external environment to the plants, then to the C _L plants F greater than herbivores, carnivores, and top carnivores. Death at each level transfers energy to flat decomposers. Energy lost as need is returned to the external environment. 2. Smiley face environment less than. Adapted from Environmental Science, Botkin and Keller, John Wiley & Son, Inc. Solar energy is transformed from the radiant to the chemical form in photosynthesis and from the chemical to mechanical and heat forms in cellular metabolism. These conversions and sequences are fundamental to the energetics of organisms and ecosystems as energy passes into and through producers, to and through consumers and decomposers, they. Radiant chemical mechanical LU consumers and decomposers sun energy producers energy P energy. A general rule in both aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems is that secondary productivity by herbivores is approximately an order of magnitude less than the primary productivity upon which it is based. Only about 1 to 5% energy of incident radiation, or 2 to 10% of par photosynthetically active radiation, is actually captured by the photosynthetic process, gross primary productivity, and the remaining portion is dissipated. Since the simultaneously occurring respiratory processes are energy-consuming and use up part of the photosynthetic gain, the net capture of energy, net primary productivity is reduced to only 0.8-4% of the incident total radiation, or 1.6-8% of par. Only the energy captured and net productivity of producers can be used by other trophic levels. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. Autotroph and detritus-based ecosystem. The autotroph-based ecosystems depend directly on the influx of solar radiation. They are characterized by a dependence on energy capture by photosynthetic autotrophs and secondarily by movement of that captured energy through the system via herbivora and carnivory. A large number of ecosystems function in this way and numerous herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores dependent on such autotrophic ecosystems. Some ecosystems depend less on direct solar energy incorporation and more on the influx of dead organic material, or detritus, produced in another ecosystem. Ecosystems, such as caves, are completely independent of direct solar energy and are instead completely energy dependent on the influx of detritus. These entities can be regarded as detritus-based ecosystems. Food Chain State 2. A classic paper by Lindemann, 1942, laid the foundations of ecological energetics. He attempted to quantify the concept of food chains and food webs by considering the efficiency of transfer between trophic levels from incident radiation received by a community through its capture by green plant ISN photosynthesis to its subsequent use by herbivores, carnivores and decomposers. In general, the transfer of energy from one trophic level to the next is in the order of 10%. A characteristic of an ecosystem is the number and nature of the species that occupy its various trophic levels. The relationship between constituents of one trophic level and constituents of adjacent trophic levels may be described by a food chain. A food chain shows the movement of energy through a system by indicating the path of food from a producer to a final consumer. In general, food chains have 3 to 5 trophic finks with 15 to 20 species. The length of food chain also may reflect the physical characteristics of a particular ecosystem. A harsh Arctic landscape has a much shorter food chain than a temperate or tropical one. Types of food chain. Grazing food chains. Grazing food chains derive their energy directly from the sun. The grazing food chain begins with primary producers. Primary consumers or herbivores form the second link in the grazing food chain. They gain their energy by consuming primary producers. Secondary consumers or primary carnivores, the third link in the chain, gain their energy by consuming herbivores. Tertiary consumers or secondary carnivores are animals that receive their organic energy by consuming primary carnivores. Primary secondary autotroph greater than herbivore L, greater than carnivore L, greater than carnivore. Detritus food chains. Detritus food chains begin with dead organic matter, which is an important source of energy. A large amount of organic matter is contributed by the death of plants' parts, animals and their excretion products. These types of food chains are present in all ecosystems. Various species of microscopic fungi, bacteria and other saprophytes play a prominent role in decomposing organic matter to obtain energy needed for their survival and growth. Detritus food chains are connected to a grazing food chain when consumers of a grazing food chain feed on the decomposers of the detrital food chain such as bacteria, molds, and fungi make use of energy stored in already dead plant and animal tissues. Most of the natural ecosystems possess both grazing and detritus types of food chains. Their relative importance, however, varies from one ecosystem to another. In terrestrial and shallow water ecosystems. Life sciences admin. Ecology. Detritus food chains dominate because a major proportion of the annual energy flow passes through this circuit. In case of tidal marshes, almost 90% of the primary production is routed through the detritus food chains. Food web. More often than not, such simple food chains are oversimplified versions of the reality of feeding relationships. Instead, there are often multiple and interconnecting pathways, as well as numbers of different species involved at each trophic level. These complex pathways resemble a web rather than a simple chain and are referred to as food webs. So, a food web is a pictorial representation of the feeding relationships between organisms in an ecosystem and consists of interlocking food chains. Energy flow model. A simplified representation of energy flow through ecosystem has been made in Figure 7.7. The model shown in figure attempts to recognize the various inputs and fates of energy. Two aspects with respect to energy flow in ecosystem need careful consideration. First, the energy flows one way, i.e., from producers through herbivores to carnivores. It cannot be transferred in the reverse direction. Second, the amount of energy flow decreases with successive trophic levels. Import of organic matter. PS equals photosynthesis, CR equals carnivores. Community Al equals absorbed light, DC equals decomposers, respiration, RS equals respiration, GP equals gross production, TC equals top carnivores, NP equals net production, HV equals herbivores. Figure 7.7. Energy. Figure 7.7. Energy flow diagram of a generalized ecosystem. Concept of the trophic level. A trophic level refers to the organism's position in the food chain. Autotrophs are at the base. Organisms that eat autotrophs are called herbivores or primary consumers. An organism that eats herbivores is a carnivore and a secondary consumer. A carnivore which eats a carnivore is a tertiary consumer, and so on. It is important to note that many animals do not specialize in their diets. Omnivores, such as humans, eat both animals and plants. Further, except for some specialists, most carnivores don't limit their diet to organisms of only one trophic level. Frogs, for instance, don't discriminate between herbivorous and carnivorous bugs in their diet. If it's the right size, and moving at the right. Life sciences admin. Ecology. Distance, chances are the frog will eat it. It's not as if the frog has brain cells to waste wondering if it's going to mess up the food chain by being a secondary consumer 1 minute and a quaternary consumer the next. Fourth trophic level tertiary consumers. Third trophic level secondary consumers. Second trophic level primary consumers. Phi Y figure, 7.8. First trophic evil producers, ESCAF food energy and traffic. Ecological pyramid. The different trophic levels of an ecosystem are related to one another and can be summarized in the form of ecological pyramids. The base of each pyramid represents the producers or the first trophic level while the apex represents tertiary or high-level consumers. Other consumer trophic levels are in between. There are 3 kinds of ecological pyramids possible which are discussed below. Pyramid of number. A graphic representation of the total number of individuals of different species belonging to each trophic level in an ecosystem is known as pyramid of number. It consists of a number of horizontal bars depicting specific trophic levels which are arranged sequentially from primary producer level through herbivore, carnivore onwards. The length of each bar represents the total number of individuals at each trophic level in an ecosystem. For most ecosystem, like grassland ecosystem, pyramids of numbers are upright because numbering of organisms decrease at successively higher trophic levels. However, there are some ecological systems for which pyramids of number may be inverted. For example, if we depict the situation of single tree along with its dependent insect population, we would get an inverted pyramid. Since the tree is a primary producer, it would represent the base of the pyramid and the dependent phytophagous insect population YNLL represent the second trophic level. Pyramid of biomass. Pyramid of biomass represents the total dry weight of living beings of different species at each trophic level at a particular time. It is usually determined by collecting all the organisms occupying each trophic level separately and measuring their dry weight. This eliminates the size difference problem because all kinds of organisms at a trophic level are weighed. Generally, the biomass of producers is much greater than biomass of herbivores and the biomass of herbivores is greater than the biomass of carnivores and so on and so forth. In other words, we find that biomass decreases at each trophic level if we move from producer to top carnivore. Therefore, diagrammatic representation of biomass of individuals belonging to the different trophic levels invariably assumes the shape of an upright pyramid. This, however, is not always the case. In some aquatic ecosystems, like large lakes and oceans, the pyramid of biomass sometimes assumes an inverted form. Since microscopic. 201. Life sciences admin. Ecology. Phytoplanktonic algae are primary producers in the aquatic system. Being single-celled organisms, they do not accumulate much biomass and consequently, at a given time, the total weight or the standing crop of phytoplankton is less as compared to herbivores or other consumers. This is the reason for the base of the pyramid in aquatic ecosystem being smaller than the upper structure. Pyramid of energy. An energy The different trophic levels of an ecosystem are related to one another and can be summarized in the form of ecological pyramids. The base of each pyramid represents the producers or the first trophic level, while the apex represents tertiary or high-level consumers. Other consumer trophic levels are in between. There are 3 kinds of ecological pyramids possible, which are discussed below. Pyramid of number. A graphic representation of the total number of individuals of different species belonging to each trophic level in an ecosystem is known as pyramid of number. It consists of a number of horizontal bars depicting specific trophic levels which are arranged sequentially from primary producer level through herbivore, carnivore onwards. The length of each bar represents the total number of individuals at each trophic level in an ecosystem. For most ecosystem, like grassland ecosystem, pyramids of numbers are upright because numbering of organisms decrease at successively higher trophic levels. However, there are some ecological systems for which pyramids of number may be inverted. For example, if we depict the situation of single tree along with its dependent insect population, we would get an inverted pyramid. Since the tree is a primary producer, it would represent the base of the pyramid and the dependent Phytophagous insect population YNLL represent the second trophic level. Pyramid of biomass. Pyramid of biomass represents the total dry weight of living beings of different species at each trophic level at a particular time. It is usually determined by collecting all the organisms occupying each trophic level separately and measuring their dry weight. This eliminates the size difference problem because all kinds of organisms at a trophic level are weighed. Generally, the biomass of producers is much greater. A graphic representation of the total number of individuals of different species belonging to each trophic level in an ecosystem is known as pyramid of number. It consists of a number of horizontal bars depicting specific trophic levels which are arranged sequentially from primary producer level through herbivore, carnivore onwards. The length of each bar represents the total number of individuals at each trophic level in an ecosystem. For most ecosystem, like grassland ecosystem, pyramids of numbers are upright because numbering of organisms decrease at successively higher trophic levels. However, there are some ecological systems for which pyramids of number may be inverted. For example, if we depict the situation of single tree along with its dependent insect population, we would get an inverted pyramid. Since the tree is a primary producer, it would represent the base of the pyramid and the dependent Phytophagous insect population YNLL represent the second trophic level. Pyramid of biomass. Pyramid of biomass represents the total dry weight of living beings of different species at each trophic level at a particular time. It is usually determined by collecting all the organisms occupying each trophic level separately and measuring their dry weight. This eliminates the size difference problem because all kinds of organisms at a trophic level are weighed. Generally, the biomass of producers is much greater than biomass of herbivores, and the biomass of herbivores is greater than the biomass of carnivores, and so on and so forth. In other words, we find that biomass decreases at each trophic level if we move from producer to top carnivore. Therefore, diagrammatic representation of biomass of individuals belonging to the different trophic levels invariably assumes the shape of an upright pyramid. This, however, is not always the case. In some aquatic ecosystems, like large lakes and oceans, the pyramid of biomass sometimes assumes an inverted form. Since microscopic. 201. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. Phytoplanktonic algae are primary producers in the aquatic system. Being single-celled organisms, they do not accumulate much biomass, and consequently, at a given time, the total weight or the standing crop of phytoplankton is less as compared to herbivores or other consumers. This is the reason for the base of the pyramid in aquatic ecosystem being smaller than the upper structure. Pyramid of energy. An energy pyramid more accurately reflects the laws of thermodynamics, with loss of energy being depicted at each transfer to another trophic level, hence the pyramid is always upright. Energy pyramids in the case of aquatic ecosystem are also upright, even where the pyramid of biomass is inverted. In energy pyramids, a given trophic level always has a smaller energy content than the trophic level immediately below it. This is due to the fact that some energy is always lost as heat in going from one trophic level to the next. Each bar in the pyramid indicates the amount of energy utilized at each trophic in a given time annually per unit area. Number of individuals. Per square meter T biomass secondary consumer I5 secondary consumer B 50 primary consumer 15 primary consumer 450 primary producer 100 primary producer Per square meter T biomass secondary consumer I5 secondary consumer B 50 primary consumer 15 primary In ecosystem transfer efficiencies. In ecosystems, living organisms are linked together by feeding relationships. Producers, or autotrophs, have the ability to fix carbon through photosynthesis via green chloroplasts in their leaves. Herbivores are the primary consumers of organic molecules fixed by the producers. Carnivores are secondary consumers, living off the organic molecules of the herbivores. There may be several levels of carnivores in any one ecosystem. In such cases, the ultimate level will be occupied by the top carnivore th. The final group of organisms in an ecosystem or decomposers are detrivores, small animals, bacteria and fungi which can break down the complex organic chemicals of dead material and waste products. The proportions of net primary production that flow along each of the possible energy pathways depend on transfer efficiencies in the way energy is used and passed from one step to the next. A knowledge of the values of just 3 categories of transfer efficiency is all that is required to predict the pattern of energy flow. These are consumption efficiency, C, assimilation efficiency, A, and production efficiency, P. Consumption efficiency is the percentage of total productivity available at one trophic level, P, that is actually consumed, ingested by a trophic compartment one level up, I. Consumption efficiency, C, equals phi_h, x 100. N-1. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. In the case of secondary consumers, it is the percentage of herbivore productivity eaten by carnivores. Consumption efficiencies of herbivores are very low, reflecting either the difficulty of utilizing plant material or the low herbivore densities. Assimilation efficiency, A, is the percentage of food energy taken into the guts of consumers in a trophic compartment, I, which is assimilated across the gut wall, A, and becomes available for incorporation into growth or used to do work. The remainder is lost to species and enters the base of the decomposer system. Assimilation efficiency, AE, equals I, X. For herbivores, detritivores and microbivores, assimilation efficiencies are low, 20–50%, while high values are achieved for carnivores, 80%. Assimilation efficiencies are low, 20–50%, while high values are achieved for carnivores, 80%. Production efficiency, PE, is the percentage of assimilated energy, A, which is incorporated into new biomass, P. The remainder is entirely lost to the community as respiratory heat. Production efficiency, PE, equals L, FLX 100. Production efficiency varies according to the taxonomic class of the organisms concerned. Invertebrates in general have high efficiencies, 30–40%, losing little energy in respiratory heat. Among the vertebrates, ectotherms have intermediate values for PE, around 10%, whilst endotherms, with high energy expenditure associated with maintaining a constant temperature, convert only 1–2% of assimilated energy into production. Similarly, herbivores tend to have higher production efficiency but lower assimilation efficiency than carnivores. Nutrient cycling. Every element that is used by living organisms. Among the vertebrates, ectotherms have intermediate values for PE, around 10%, whilst endotherms, with high energy expenditure associated with maintaining a constant temperature, convert only 1–2% of assimilated energy into production. Similarly, herbivores tend to have higher production efficiency but lower assimilation efficiency than carnivores. Nutrient cycling. Every element that is used by living organisms passes between the biotic, living, and abiotic, non-living components of the biosphere. The pathways taken by these chemical elements are called the biogeochemical cycles. These cycles fall into 2 categories. In one group of biogeochemical cycles, the atmosphere constitutes a major reservoir of the element that exists there in a gaseous phase. Such cycles, called gaseous nutrient cycles, show little or no permanent change in the distribution and abundance of the element. Carbon and nitrogen are prime representatives of biogeochemical cycles with a prominent gaseous phase. In a sedimentary cycle, the major reservoir is the lithosphere from which the elements are released largely by weathering. The sedimentary cycles, exemplified by phosphorus, sulfur, iodine, and most of the other biologically important elements, have a tendency to stagnate. In such cycles, a portion of the supply may accumulate in large quantities, as in the deep ocean sediment, and thereby become inaccessible to organisms and to continual cycling. Some of the elements that are characterized by sedimentary cycles do have a gaseous phase, sulfur and iodine being among them, but these phases are insignificant in that there is no large gaseous reservoir. Phosphorus cycle. The principal stocks of phosphorus occur in the water of the soil, rivers, lakes, oceans, rocks and ocean sediments. The phosphorus cycle may be described as an open cycle because of the general tendency for mineral phosphorus to be carried from the land inexorably to the oceans, mainly in rivers. A typical phosphorus atom, released from the rocks by chemical weathering, may enter and cycle within the terrestrial community for years, or centuries before it is carried via groundwater into a stream, where it takes part in the nutrient spiraling. 393. Life Sciences Admin. Ecology. Atmosphere, Y. Sewage. Deforestation. Terrestrial. Communities. Fertilizers, human activities. Fishing. RUEESI. In rivers, lakes, aquatic, P soil, and oceans. Communities, 3. Communities, 3. Sediments. Figure 7.13, phosphorus cycle. Nitrogen cycle. The atmospheric phase is predominant in the global nitrogen cycle, in which nitrogen fixation and denitrification by microbial organisms are by far the most important. Atmospheric nitrogen is also fixed by lightning discharges during storms and reaches the ground as nitric acid dissolved in rainwater, but only about 3–4% of fixed nitrogen derives from this pathway. Organic forms of nitrogen are also present in the atmosphere, some of which results from the reaction of hydrocarbons and oxides of nitrogen in polluted air masses. The magnitude of the nitrogen flux in stream flow from terrestrial to aquatic communities may be relatively small. This is because nitrogen is one of the 2 elements, along with phosphorus, that most often limits plants' growth. Finally, there is a small annual loss of nitrogen to ocean sediments. Combustion increases NOI.